Hey, this is Clint with Bucket List Bars. You know, after almost a decade of traveling this country to find her most historic watering holes, we've been to some pretty creepy places. In this episode, we're going to travel to 5 of the most haunted and most historic bars that we've ever been to. Our first visit brings us to the oldest bar in America, the White Horse Tavern in Newport, Rhode Island. The White Horse Tavern was established in 1673 and has seen a number of characters pass through her doors. In fact, the great-great-grandfather of Benedict Arnold, also named Benedict Arnold, was Newport's governor until 1678, so he no doubt had a drink or two here. During the 18th century, the owner's son was reported to be a pirate and rum smuggler. When the British authorities were hunting for him, he hid out at the White Horse. During the Revolutionary War, the tavern was confiscated by the British and used to house soldiers. In short, the history is fantastic, but it's what's on the second floor that gave us the chills.
Let's see, of course there's rumors that the tavern is haunted. So the most activity, one could say, is in the room that's above us right now, what we consider the master bedroom. When there was a very active patriot that owned the tavern, William Mays, he just vacated the premises when the British came into Newport and took over control. In that time, two things happened. One is that it's rumored that when it was a boarding house, the little girl died of smallpox. So still to this day, you hear, sometimes customers hear a little girl singing, or our bartender Mark has heard someone run across the floor and run up with his little lemon and lime knife and tried to attack whoever was trying to break into the tavern. There was no one there. So that happened, and then there's also a story that when one of the owner's sons was a pirate, that he murdered someone in that room. We try to not believe that one. There is a story that two men came in when they just came in for food, drink, to stay overnight. And so they went to sleep, just laying next to each other in front of the fire, totally normal. And then the next morning, the innkeeper, you could say, came over to check on them and asked what they'd like for breakfast and whatnot. And there was one man laying there dead, and the other was nowhere to be found. So supposedly we're haunted by him too. We have a whole bunch of different people going on in here. When the British came into Newport and just kind of took control of everything, supposedly they came into our building and just made it a boarding house for people that just to stay here. And in that time, smallpox was still a worry, and a little girl supposedly died of smallpox. I told you the story of customers hearing her singing, which I've never heard, thank God. But supposedly, well, I was here for this. This was about a year and a half ago. We had a family come in for lunch. It was just like the grandparents, parents, and their child. It was a little boy. And the little boy was just running around the restaurant because we had no one else here at the time. It was in the middle of winter. They heard him giggling and just running around. So of course the mom's like, what's going on? Runs upstairs and she's like, what are you doing? And the little boy goes, oh, just playing with my new friend. There's no one. There was no one to be playing with. So that's fun too. And for me to be the one closing up the building a majority of the time, it's really great to remember these things. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the lesson here is, if you make it to the White Horse in Newport, get a table upstairs. Stay for a while and have a few drinks. Then listen for the sound of a little girl giggling from a corner. Next, we swing into the desert southwest to the oldest bar in Tucson, Arizona, the Tap Room at the Hotel Congress. Opened in 1919, the Hotel Congress in Tucson, Arizona quickly became important to the city and the region. Located across from the train depot, opened in 1907, the hotel saw scores of travelers coming to the Southwest from all over the country. Some of its most notorious travelers arrived from Chicago in 1934, with luggage consisting of almost $25,000 in cash and some Thompson submachine guns. It turned out to be the gang of none other than John Dillinger, who was later captured at the train depot by the Tucson police. But while Dillinger and his gang checked out of the hotel for good, there were some guests that never seemed to leave. Talking to the owner, we found out the place is haunted.
Talk about the ghosts. So we're haunted?
Well, you know, people say that they are.
I heard it from the maids. Yeah.
Well, the maids, it depends. I'll tell you, I never know whether to say it's haunted or not. But the fire department was doing a project where they wanted to come in and video the hotel so that if something should happen in the hotel, a fire, that they would be able to put that video in and know exactly where everything was and how to be able, what safety for the patrons. And I thought, well, that was a really good idea, and they would help us make sure that we are, up to code and things are going right. And they did this project, and they won all kinds of awards for it. And they wanted to take my husband and I out to dinner. So we went to a nice Mexican place, and the photographer asked me if the place was haunted. And of course, I never, as I said, know whether to say whether people are scared or they say, wow, that's great. And I said, why? And he said, because as he videoed every room, that there were orbs. And that was indicative of ghosts. And of course, there's been lots of people that tell me they see the same people over and over again. Different kinds of stories that are fun.
Oh, interesting.
Friendly
ghosts.
Happy ghosts. They just
Happy
want to say
ghosts.
hi.
They've been here.
And after some cajoling, we talked her into showing us the room where most of the activity occurs.
Okay, so now we're going to the...
This is, they say, is the most haunted room. Mm-hmm. You can see a little bathroom.
So who haunts this place? People pass away here?
There have been people that have passed away, but over the period of time, I'm sure. But this person, I think that what happened in this room is they said there might have been an altercation of some sorts, but don't really know what it was. But that's what the lore they say about this room, why it's haunted. But I noticed, I think it's very interesting how they put up all the religious paintings in this this room.
They haven't fallen down.
No. But I have had a gentleman come with his pet that was staying in a room, and the windows all open up, so the air was coming in, and his dog barked, and the bathroom door slammed shut. And so he turns on his light and he sees that his deadbolt is still locked, and so he doesn't think anything of it. And the next morning he opens his bathroom door, and all the towels and everything were in the toilet.
Oh my goodness. So didn't like the dog.
Well, everything was fine. He never went in there. The dog stopped barking, and so I guess so. Don't bring a dog into my room. Anyway, so there you go.
The next time you're in Tucson, we invite you to have at least a few drinks downstairs and make sure to book room 242. You might just have a visitor in the middle of the night.
Okay, so now we're going...
Now we head to New York, to the historic Earrin. Built sometime before 1812, this small 3-story building at 326 Spring Street houses some of the most notable living history left in New York City. In 1833, the building, which is only about 5 feet from the Hudson at the time, was sold to Thomas Cloak, who opened a bar on the ground floor. There's been a bar here ever since. This makes the Earrin perhaps the oldest continuously serving establishment in the whole city. Naturally, because of its proximity to the water, its history includes selling liquor and alcohol to nearby passing ships and sailors. It was a pretty rough area, serving river pirates and immigrant gangs of New York. There was even a brothel upstairs at one point, and that's where we find the ghost rooms. Led by our tour guide, bartender Gary, we explore the upstairs rooms where rumors abound about supernatural activities.
And this is you can, if you want to take a little walk up there, there's a little attic up there for you to see.
Again?
Yeah.
After you. Is that bad up there?
No, I'm just saying, if you want to go up and shoot, it might be better for you to go up first.
Is there any, there's apparently no time here.
Ouch.
This is where the ghost likes to hang out most of all.
Is there another floor too?
No, this is it. Yeah.
This is all redone?
We just redone that now the last couple of months because we had to put an exit upstairs, so we had to.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. Like this, it's the roof outside is all original. It's just we had to make another exit.
We're here. About 20 hours now.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, if it was easy.
Well, maybe you'll have better luck than we did. Though we might have struck out, we think you need to come by some late night and see what you can find. Knock back a few whiskeys and see what you can see. Our fourth haunted bar takes us to Motor City, where we find Tommy's Detroit Bar and Grill. During the mid-1800s, the building at this location, as well as the church next door, were part of the Underground Railroad. Tunnels below the buildings were used to shuttle runaway slaves to nearby Canada. Records show that in 1920, an Italian restaurant occupied the main level of the structure, and later, during Prohibition, the basement of the structure was turned into a speakeasy called Little Harry's, rumored to have been a favorite hangout of the notorious Purple Gang, Jewish mobsters who controlled Detroit's bootlegging scene. It's in the basement that Tommy, the owner of the joint, has had more than his share of supernatural experiences. And so while exploring it, we sat down to hear the stories of what he's seen over the years.
We've never had any, there's been some psychics that have kind of gotten here on tours that I didn't invite them for that purpose, and they've had some wild things to say. But I had a friend of mine, in fact, she was just here a week ago or so with her husband, and I left her down the basement by herself, which I've done with a couple of people. One of my cousins from Montreal, I left him down in the basement here by himself, big man, okay, and he spent, it was a packed house upstairs after a hockey game, 45 minutes he was down here in the dark. And he's like, Tommy, I could feel, hands on me and blowing in my ear and stuff like that. And he says, he just felt the presence all the way around him. Well, when she was sitting here, this friend of mine, she was down here for a good 20 minutes to half hour. She comes to the top of the stairs, just sobbing uncontrollably. And she said, there's so many spirits down here, and they're all sad, okay? And so I said, well, think about it. I said, can't be the people from the days of Prohibition, except for the guy that's buried in a room. Yeah. They're all having a good time, right? But you think about the people from the days of the Underground Railroad, where they came from, not knowing where they were going, just what they were enduring just to be here in the waiting, Yeah. So she, a couple of times, and she just, like I said, it took her a while to really shake that, So, but this building was empty for a 3-year period, 2007, 8, and 9, I think it was. And behind us, there's an office building, and it's been empty for about 9 months now, but for several years they had a brokerage company in there, and they happened to be open late, so they had a security guard out there. So we got to know him. He'd been actually working there 12 years, and he told us, he says, before you guys, there was one owner before me, before the place was closed, or after the place was closed, and he says, that 3-year period where it was closed was really spooky around here. I mean, there wasn't even a street light out front of the bar. He said if there's nothing going on across the street, it was just really creepy, a lot of weird stuff. So he's telling me stuff, and there was a couple women who were volunteers at the church who came over this one night while we were talking. So he tells me, he said on more than one occasion in those days, they would see in the dead of night, they would see these, the alley's is dark, can't see a thing. They would see these figures emerge from the wall of the church, kind of in robes and kind of huddled together in like a fog, and they would move down the alley and disappear into this building, a wall of this building. I'm going, come on, man, I'm not buying it, okay? And he says, Tommy, I'm telling you the truth, I swear to God. And so over the next couple weeks, I thought about it a lot, because it kind of gave me the chills when I thought about it. And I questioned him again, and he says, no, man, I'm telling you the truth, okay? So this is actually like 2 years ago, and it was September. The Red Wings were playing a preseason game, and it was raining out. It was still pretty warm. And so it was toward the end of the night. We turned the lights off on the outside, and I stepped out on the stoop to get some air. Okay. All of a sudden, I start hearing these footsteps in the alley. Kind of sound you hear when people are walking on cement. And there's pebbles, And when I stepped off the stoop, and I looked down the alley, walking toward me on the other side of the dumpster was this figure with a white suit and with a white fedora on. I mean, my jaw just dropped. I tried to speak to him, And when I did, I tried to, jaw dropped, I tried to speak. All of a sudden there was a flash and he disappeared in the wall of the building. Nobody will ever tell me that didn't happen. My bartender thought I was hammered and poured me a double shot when I came in, but no. I mean, it happened. I could feel it. It's let me, my body just goosebumped up from head to toe.
You became a believer.
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, there's, you think about it, a lot of people have had experiences. There's people that work here now who won't going to come down here by themselves. I mean, I think we have a kind of a jester type ghost. We've had a couple of guys that have come down here on a busy night to get a case of beer out of the cooler and have been pushed from behind and ended up on all fours and the door had slammed behind them. One guy swears he heard giggling outside the door.
If you call ahead, you can set up a tour of the basement with Tommy. Make sure to have a couple of drinks before going. That will make the visit that much more memorable. For our last bar, we traveled to the tiny village of Mesilla, New Mexico, just a stone's throw from the Mexican border. Here we find a bar and restaurant with more supernatural activity than most any other place we've been, the Double Eagle. The Double Eagle occupies a nondescript adobe building that you probably wouldn't even notice. Its entrance and its luxury are hidden from the street behind a wrought iron gate. The building served as a family residence from its founding in the mid-1800s to well into the 20th century, until it was finally used for cotton storage in the 1960s. It was bought by the oil magnate Robert O. Anderson in 1970, and he spared no expense in turning it into an award-winning restaurant. It was only after they completed the renovation that the people who worked there realized the building was still occupied by some of its previous residents.
And we can go out into the ghost room, and that's where the ghosts like to hang out. We've got not one but two ghosts, and they do move throughout the restaurant, but they like this room in particular. The ghosts came about because the first family that moved in here, the Maíz family, built this huge house. It's still the largest house ever built in Mesilla. And big house like this, they had a lot of servants. One of the servants was a little teenage girl named Inez. Well, in the family, there was a teenage boy named Armando. Well, teenage boy, teenage girl, same roof, they fell in love.
Right.
And teenagers don't fall in love, they fall in love.
Right.
Well, mom finds out about the romance, says there's no way my son's going to marry a May. We've got big plans for you. We're going to marry you off to Aristoxia down in Chihuahua City, maybe even Mexico City.
Right.
And if we do have to scrape to the bottom on the social scale, we go to the Americans in Santa Fe, but that's as low as we're going.
Yeah, those Americans.
Those Americans
right
pretty low.
Right with the servant, right, yeah.
So she fires Inez, sends her from the house, says they cannot see one another. But do teenage boys listen to their mother?
Of course.
They continue singing on the side, and one day mom comes home early and unexpectedly from a trip, and she finds Armando and Inez in Armando's bedroom, this room. And they were in here and they were, anyway.
Yeah.
So
having a conversation.
Having a conversation.
Right.
Apparently kind of loudly, because mom comes from across this huge house to find out what's going on.
Right.
Mom gets so upset she grabs her sewing shears. In those days they were a big pair of scissors, and she attacks Inez, stabs her to death, and in the struggle she stabbed her own son, and he died in the same room 3 days later. So the important thing for us is that they both died.
Right.
Because now we got two ghosts.
Right.
And ever since then, the house has been haunted by the ghost lovers. Robert O. Anderson didn't know that when he bought the building. He didn't know it was haunted. The Mesilleros are kind of a closed-mouthed people, so they wouldn't tell him. Things started happening. The interior decorator put a couple of chairs in the corner of this kind of square room to kind of fill space, and the chairs immediately started wearing out. And if you look closely, you can see the wear marks, and they're exactly where somebody would be sitting with their back, with the arms, and on the seat. And if you look closely on the front of the seat, you can see that one of the chairs is worn very evenly across the front, and one of the chairs is worn like in two spots where somebody's wearing pants. So we know that that chair belongs to Inez, and the chair with two spots belongs to Armando. And so this is their room, and it was named the Carlotta Room after Empress Carlotta of Mexico before they found out about the ghosts. Since then, they brought in a couple of paintings here that were done from the memory of somebody who was like 6 or 7 at the time. She said or explained this to a painter when she was a grandmother in her 60s, and so we're not quite sure how her memory was, but this is what she remembers the parents looking like. This is Mr. Mais and this is Mrs. Mais. And paintings have been kind of vandalized over the years, but the story is that after the murders, because they were wealthy citizens, nothing really happened to her. They did sell the house about 6 months later and moved down to the interior of Mexico into Chihuahua. The story in Mesilla is that she went into an insane asylum and never spoke again after the murders, but we can track the move to Chihuahua, but we don't really know what happened after that specifically.
So this would be
Mrs. Mais, and she's the scissor wielder,
right? She's a crazy
and that was her husband.
Right.
So, and
I'm kind of surprised that the ghosts haven't messed with the painting. Actually,
no, they don't. They don't. That was all human stuff. Actually, high schoolers on various trips.
So I've got to ask: have servers or waiters, waitstaff?
Oh yeah, quite often. Yeah. The ghosts are not mean or malevolent, at least not to us. The things they do are more like teenage pranks. They move things around. They turn lights on and off that are connected to a breaker, so that light will go on, but this light will stay on. They're on the same circuit. So that sort of thing happens. They play particular tricks on some of the servers. For one server, she hears her name being called from another room. And there's 13 rooms in the building, so she goes to the next room and goes, what? There's nobody there. She hears it from the next room. So she circles the building 3 times before she figures it out, that it's a ghost.
Right. Oh, that's great.
A couple of summers ago, we had about 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 tables left on the patio out there. And some people got up and left, and one of the glasses sitting on the table moved to the edge of the table and dropped off and broke on the patio floor. And all these people watched it. And one of the ladies was from California and said, well, do you guys have earthquakes? Is that what happened? And kind of shook off. And I told her about the ghost, and I think she would have preferred the earthquake.
Did they leave quickly?
No, they all were, taking pictures of the broken glass and would let us sweep it up. It's like, okay, it's just a broken glass.
Yeah,
okay.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time.
So we get pretty casual about it.
Absolutely.
But, the only time they seem to get upset is when you sit in their chairs. And it doesn't happen to everyone. It doesn't happen to all the time. But we've got many, many comments of people who've come in and sat in the chairs saying, I ain't afraid of no ghost.
Right.
And the next few days, things happen to them. They have bad dreams, nightmares, that sort of thing.
Right.
So we've got a lot of postcards and notes and emails from people saying, oh my God, warn people about those damn chairs.
Don't sit in the chairs. Have you ever tried to have them reupholstered or anything like that?
We have actually, because they couldn't figure out what was going on, didn't realize the chairs were connected. The chairs were reupholstered about 3 years, like 1973, and they immediately started wearing out again. So we haven't touched them since.
That one, you can see that one is just really got that.
Yeah, and like I say, we warn people don't sit in the chairs,
like
and even if one or two pop in for a minute or two, that still wouldn't cause the level of wear that we're seeing.
Right,
so
no, absolutely.
Just one of those odd occurrences.
Yeah.
We did have dinner parties in here, and people who are psychics, they're not called psychics anymore, they're called sensitives.
Yes.
Sensitives.
My wife is sensitive.
Well,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
so
different stuff.
people are in here and they'll have to leave. They say, there's just this activity is so strong. We had one dinner party and asked us to come in and close the window because cold air was coming in. They were very cold. And we had to explain that that's really not a real window. It's a solid wall, and we just kind of hung it on there for the look. And they immediately left. They moved out to the patio. They didn't want to stay here. So things like that do happen all the time.
That's wonderful.
Clint, you want to take a seat in the chair so I can get a shot of you?
No. No, I think I'll stay away from the chair.
Smart man.
Yeah.
Not a brave man, but a smart man.
Not a brave man.
Let's go out to the...
The Double Eagle is also known for its margaritas, so definitely have a couple before or after visiting that ghost room. You might need it to steal your nerves. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Bucket List Bars. If you did, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. And don't forget to pick up our book, Bucket List Bars, available at Amazon.com. For Bucket List Bars, I'm Clint. Cheers.